Sweet the whispers in your ear whenever ember wanders near.
Absolutely, we can do this. No, not Lawrence. This is from Echo Base about the about Kristen's husband, like putting out info about another Bricks and Minifig store. So yeah, we can absolutely watch this. Like it's a follow up to Andrew. Yes, absolutely. We'll do that. So yeah, Echo Base put this out like today, and it's so for those who don't know, basically the owner of the Bricks and Minifig store in Salem, where Ben first started his investigation against Bricks and Minifigs, her husband has apparently done information, provided information in regards to the company in another store, it looks like. Now, I will go into this with a preface that we should take things, take this with a grain of salt. Okay? We absolutely should be taking this with a grain of salt. All right? And by the way, Holy Bullet, yes, Keen, let me know about it. We might watch that like on Monday, perhaps. Keen, let me know about the video. So when we go into this, take this with a grain of salt, as with all things. Because this may be coming from just one person. We don't know if there's any substantiating evidence or witnesses as of yet. So go into this with an open mind. Don't the impulse because of the circumstances. We're gonna immediately want to be like, oh my god, yeah, this person's terrible. And Otaku, thank you for the raid. Welcome in, raiders. Hope you had a wonderful stream. Welcome in. We are about to look at some Bricks and Minifigs information that this may be even more widespread than we thought possible. So let's get into it and see what we got.
BAM has said the Salem Bricks and Minifig situation is an isolated incident. But now Ben Gorman, the husband of former Salem store owner Crystal Gorman, has released a video exposing another Oregon location. And this new Oregon location had a 65-year-old owner that experienced the same kind of takeover and dispute with Bricks and Minifig's corporate, and the situation is explosive.
Wait. Is this the other store that Brandon took over? Because remember, he took over another Oregon store. I forget the town name. It started with an E. And plus, don't forget that story is that he came into town because another store was closing and he was getting inventory and all that stuff. Is this that one? Yeah, Eugene, thank you. Is this a Eugene store, I wonder? No. The other store that Brandon took over was in Eugene, Oregon. So I wonder if that's this store.
So the question is simple. Do we have a pattern here? This definitely does not look good for BAM. Hey everybody, I'm Coach. Welcome back to Echo Base Network. Today we have a major new update in the Reckless Ben Bricks and Minifigs controversy. In this one,
really? You saw an interview with another Bricks and Minifigs owner in Florida who said the same thing happened. It sounds like this may be a pattern. If we're getting multiple owners now coming forward saying, yeah, I got booted out of my franchise by Bricks and Minifigs like this too.
Is not coming directly from Reckless Ben. This is coming from Ben Gorman, the husband of Crystal Gorman, who owned the Salem, Oregon franchise. And it's their store that's at the center of the Mansell Lego collection dispute. And what Ben Gorman dropped is huge because it doesn't just focus on the Salem store. It points to another Oregon Bricks and Minifigs franchise that had a dispute with BAM Corporate. And it leads us to have a much bigger question. Was the Salem store really just an isolated incident? Or do we have a pattern here? This definitely does not look good for BAM. There was a report that hit the internet yesterday that said that BAM has suffered a 20 to 25% decrease in its retail sales in the last month. And this situation right here is not going to help BAM moving forward. Now, before we get into this, I want to be very clear. We're going to talk about allegations, public claims, and what Ben Gorman says in his video. We're not saying anything has been proven in court. We're not saying Bricks and Minifigs committed a crime. And we're not
Yes.
telling anyone to harass, contact, threaten, review bomb, or go after anyone involved in this story. I don't want to get sued.
Yes.
But Brick
And that's why I also make the preface that these are like, we don't know if there's any evidence to substantiate. We don't know if there's proof. We're just, take all of what we're about to hear with a grain of salt.
and Minifigs recently released a public statement where they tried to frame the Salem situation as an isolated incident tied to one former franchise location. Now Ben Gorman is saying, hold on, there's another situation people need to look at. First, Ben Gorman starts by explaining who he is. He says that he and his wife Crystal own the Salem Bricks and Minifig store. He describes himself as more of a silent partner, while Crystal handled the day-to-day operation of the store. He says the store was doing well, that sales were increasing, and that Crystal had a good reputation inside the company. According to Ben, people with Bricks and Minifigs respected her expertise, and at one point, she was even brought in to help evaluate another collection. That matters because Ben is trying to establish that this was not some failing store from the beginning. His version is that the Salem store was growing and that Crystal was seen as competent and knowledgeable. Then he talks about the purchase of the franchise, and this is where he says there were early red flags. Ben claims that after they bought the store, Bricks and Minifigs did not properly turn over certain things that should have been handled under the franchise agreement. He specifically mentions issues with the bank account connection, the lease connection, and access to social media accounts. Now, why does that matter? Because Ben says that at that time, BAM treated these things like they were no big deal. He says the attitude was basically, don't worry about it, we'll handle it, we'll tack this on, we'll cover that. But later, according to Ben, these kinds of issues became important when the relationship fell apart. So one of the first big questions is this: were these just messy franchise transition problems, or were they part of a larger issue how BAM handled franchisees? That is Ben Gorman's argument. Then he gets to the Mansell collection. He says Brian Mansell came into the Salem store and made a consignment agreement with Crystal. According to Ben, everything was going fine at first. The sets were being sold and Brian was getting payments. Then Ben says everything changed when someone came into the store and essentially said, "Give us the keys, we're taking the store back." Now, this is where Ben makes a very important claim.
Branded.
He says that when BAM took the store back, they did not provide an inventory list, even though he believes that the franchise agreement requires them to do so. And that's a huge point, because if you take possession of a store full of inventory, fixtures, cases, shelving, cameras, furniture, and potentially a customer's consigned Lego collection that might be worth $200,000, the question becomes, where is the inventory? Where is the valuation? What exactly was taken? What belonged to the store? What belonged to the customers? What belonged to the Mansell family? That has been one of the biggest issues in this entire controversy from the beginning. But then Ben Gorman takes the video into a much bigger direction. He says someone sent him information about another case involving a different Bricks and Minifig store in Oregon. Not Salem, another store. He identifies it as a complaint involving Plastic Pallet LLC, connected to a Bricks and Minifig store in Canby in Clackamas County, Oregon. I probably just totally messed up how to pronounce that.
Okay, so it's not the Eugene store that Brandon also was the franchisee owner of. This is a completely different store than the two we are aware of that are in some way involved in this case. Like, Brandon came in, took over the Salem store. He also was the franchisee owner of the Eugene store in Oregon. This one that we're talking about here is a completely different one.
And this is where the video becomes much bigger than just the Mansell collection. Ben reads from the complaint, and according to what he reads, that complaint alleged that BAM violated the agreement in numerous ways, interfered with the business, threatened termination, inserted itself into landlord issues, took possession of assets, failed to provide inventory or valuation, and caused damages estimated at $200,000. Maybe they just have a thing about $200,000. Now, again, these are allegations from another legal dispute. We're not saying those allegations have been proven. We would need to know the full legal history, the outcome, and BAM's response. But the reason this matters is because Ben Gorman is pointing to this and asking a very simple question. Does this sound familiar? And that is the question that viewers are going to be asking as well. Maybe some lawyers too. Because Bricks and Minifigs has tried to present the Salem situation as an isolated problem related to a single former franchisee. But if there is another Oregon dispute where a franchisee also alleged issues involving assets, inventory, valuation, control of the store, and conversion, then people are naturally going to ask whether Salem was truly isolated. One of the most important words Ben
And by the way, I did say when all of this was really blowing up, I did say we're going to start hearing from other Bricks and Minifigs franchisees. They are going to start coming forward and going, "Oh yeah, they're fucking us over too." I'm a little surprised we haven't heard about from more of them, but I'm guessing maybe they might be under some kind of contract with Bricks and Minifigs, like a non-disparagement clause in the contract when they become a franchisee, that they cannot speak out against Bricks and Minifigs. But I suspect that many former franchisee owners are going to have seen this case and may start coming out. Like one of you guys mentioned that potentially speaking, there is another situation of this in Florida. And God knows how many more other ones there are. So this could get really interesting.
Focuses on is conversion. That is a civil legal term. It does not necessarily mean criminal theft. It generally refers to someone allegedly taking or controlling property in a way that interferes with the rightful owner's control over that property. And Ben makes a point that I think is important. A lot of people online use the word stolen. Legal documents may not use that word. They may use words like conversion. So when people read legal filings, they need to understand that the terminology can be different. Even when the underlying allegation is about someone taking or controlling property they allegedly should not have taken or controlled. Again, that does not prove anything by itself, but it matters because Ben says this other complaint used language about conversion of assets, failure to disclose inventory, and damages estimated at $200,000. Then Ben makes another major point. He talks about what he says happened when BAM took back the Salem store. He plays or references audio where a BAM representative allegedly warned them that if they went the legal route, it would be expensive, messy, and difficult. Now, I want to be careful
sounds
here.
Familiar.
We're not going to overstate what that proves. But if the audio is accurate, then it raises a serious question. Was BAM using the cost of litigation as leverage against a franchisee? That's a fair question.
Oh, I think it's very likely. It feels like this is their playbook. Because you remember, this is like a $400 million company. I absolutely could see them leveraging legal action as a means to bully people and saying, what are you going to do about it? Sue us? Our lawyers can outlast yours. We have more money, so we can drag this out of court and cost you tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the average person, even a franchisee owner, does not have tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars that they can burn on a lawyer, because there's honestly not all that many lawyers that work on consignment. So I'm guessing this seems like a standard bully tactic. If this is true, if we're seeing a repeated instance of them using the threat of litigation, of dragging litigation out until the person basically goes broke and then they have to drop the case because they can't afford their lawyers anymore, this now is a pattern.
Maybe even obvious. Because most normal people cannot afford a long legal fight with a corporation or a franchise system, even if someone believes they are right. The cost of proving it can be enormous. And Ben Gorman says that is exactly the position they are in now. He says they are in this fight to the end, but they need support because the legal battle is expensive. So what is the big takeaway here? The big takeaway is that Ben Gorman is now pointing to another Oregon franchise dispute and asking whether Salem was really the only situation like this. The responsible way to say it is, a former BAM owner is pointing to public allegations from another franchise dispute, and those allegations raise questions about BAM's isolated incident narrative. That is the story. And it matters because BAM's public statement tried to narrow this controversy. They want people to see the Salem situation as a one-off problem connected to one former franchise store. But Ben Gorman's video pushes the story in the opposite direction. It asks whether the Salem store, the Mansell collection, the inventory questions, and the franchisee dispute are part of something bigger. Now, what should we watch next? First, we need to see the documents Ben Gorman references. If they are publicly available, and they are, people should look at the actual filings, not just clips and screenshots. Yes. Second, we need to know what happened in the plastic pallet case. Was it settled? Was it sent to arbitration? Was there a ruling? Did BAM respond to those allegations? Those details matter. Third, we need to see whether BAM responds to Ben Gorman's video. And fourth, we need to see whether more former franchisees come forward. And they have been coming forward, like our friend, The Last Relic. Because if this was truly an isolated problem, as BAM says, then more franchises wouldn't be coming forward. So other former franchise owners are saying something similar happened to me. And what that does is make the entire BAM and Reckless Ben's controversy enter a completely new phase, and it's getting bigger. After hearing Ben Gorman point to another Oregon franchise dispute, do you believe the Salem situation was isolated? Or is this starting to look like a much bigger Bricks and Minifigs Corporation story? Let us know what you think in the comments. Thank you for being here. I'm Coach for Nick. We are, you are, Echo Base Network. See you on the next one.
I definitely think that this is widespread. By the very nature of what happened in Salem, the way it was facilitated, the way Bricks and Minifigs facilitated all of this in Salem is not a one-off. Everything that was done in Salem feels like it was practiced and it's been done before. And I imagine that we are going to probably start hearing from franchisee owners, former franchisee owners that are saying, yeah, this has happened before, that Bricks and Minifigs has done this before with other customers, with other franchisees, because the totality of everything that they did, and that occurred in Ben's videos, that basically that with the follow-up with CoffeeZilla, when he did the follow-up with all of the evidence that Crystal and Ben provided in terms of like the photographs, all of the inventory that they maintained themselves, that Bricks and Minifigs did not maintain. This feel like all of the responses by Anand and his brother. Like, this doesn't feel like a one-off. This feels like an undisclosed pattern of behavior with this company. And I imagine before too long, we are going to start hearing from more people that are going to be telling the same story. I really do. It's just a matter of time, honestly.